Hey, I'm Jusko from ProudMoney.com. I just had a Frontier Airlines nightmare, and I'm going to tell you about it and maybe some lessons learned. But first, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not already. And if you have already, I thank you for doing so. So I'm a little discontented with Frontier Airlines right now, and I would love to get your thoughts after I tell you the story as to whether I should be angry, how much of it was my fault, all that kind of thing. So anyway, I took a trip with my son who is college age, and this matters to the story a little bit later. We went out to Las Vegas, flew into Las Vegas, spent a day there, then rented a car, went out to the Hoover Dam, spent a couple days at the Grand Canyon, went out to Zion National Park. A very excellent trip, and getting out there on Frontier, no problem. So I chose Frontier because they had one of the few nonstops from Cleveland to Las Vegas and Las Vegas back to Cleveland, obviously. Last day of our vacation was a Monday. We were going to take the red eye, 11:45 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. back to Cleveland. So obviously we're gonna have a long day, and then we are gonna be catching the flight very late, hoping that we could do some sleeping on the flight. So we did have a long day. We checked out of our hotel like at 11 o'clock or whatever, drove 2 hours to Antelope Canyon, which you definitely should check out if you are in that area, then drove 4 hours back to the Las Vegas airport to catch that red eye. And throughout the day, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I should probably check in online for that Frontier flight, but somehow I just kept getting distracted. So it was kind of in my mind, but I wasn't doing it. And then finally, as we were driving, I was like, well, at this point, it probably doesn't matter much. We're gonna be way in the back of the plane. Not good, but we can deal with it. So we get to the airport and we check our bags. You have to pay extra for your bags on Frontier no matter what you do. So we decided to check them instead of bringing them on the plane. And they get us a boarding pass. And I didn't even really look at it at first, but then my son looks at his as we're sort of walking away and he says, well, this is kind of weird. What does this mean? And on the boarding pass, it says something like boarding group 99 and there's no seat assigned. And so as we're walking, he's like, do you think we should get this checked out? And I'm like, yeah, probably. So we go to the gate agent and we say, what is up with this? I'm thinking we're gonna get like reticketed. It was just like, you know, some kind of stopgap thing or whatever. So she says, well, they should have told you when you were checking your bags, this flight is oversold, and what that could mean, and she's dancing all around the fact that what it does mean is we might not be getting on that plane. Now you might know that oversold means there are too many people for the number of seats on the plane, so what the airlines do is they try to incentivize people to voluntarily leave so that they can fit everyone on and everyone is relatively happy. The way they do that is they offer travel vouchers. So Frontier offers a $700 voucher for future Frontier travel if people will voluntarily leave. Then they up it to $1,000. While they're doing this, people are going onto the plane. As far as I can tell, no one is really biting on this offer, probably because we're talking about a red-eye flight. People are tired, and the next time you could get home was going to be 2 days if you took it. So it's not like this was just a minor inconvenience of, you know, 8 to 10 hours or whatever, and you were going to get this big travel voucher. So I'm standing there getting more and more agitated. So then the gate agent supervisor comes over to us and she talks in that nice calm voice that they try to use to keep you under control, and she says, I understand that you might be a little confused as to what is happening. I said, I'm not confused at all. I'm upset about what is happening. And she basically says, well, we're not sure yet. Sometimes people don't make the flight. We don't know what exactly is going to happen. And then she kind of walks away and I'm getting a little shaky with my anger. And finally she comes back, and there's only 3 of us left at this point. There's me, my son, one other guy who it looks like are not going to get on the plane. And she says to us, well, it looks like we might have room. And I'm thinking, you better have room, because telling me that you might have room is really going to make me mad when I find out that you don't have room. So they go away for a little bit, they come back and they say, well, we only have room for 1. And it's me, my son, and this other guy. So we're like, well, you go. It makes no sense for me and my son to split up while you're going to be left here. So he goes. My son and I are the only 2 that don't make the flight. And not only does Frontier not let us on the flight, you have to remember that we now have 2 days before we're going to be able to get on that same flight again and get home. Now, while we were waiting, my son got on his phone and he found out that if you are bumped from a flight involuntarily, they have to give you at least 4 times the amount that the ticket costs, the one-way ticket. And this is what Frontier does. They actually write us a check. While we're in the airport, they go off somewhere and they write each one of us a check for $550. $1,100. So between the two of us, that's $1,100. Now the initial cost of that one-way part of the flight would have been around $275, but still over $800 they're giving us, which might sound pretty good, and you get a couple extra days in Vegas. That's probably how some people would look at it, but the way that I looked at it is we can't go home for 2 days. We've already been on vacation for a week. I'm tired and ready to go home. I have checked my bags, which did make the flight to Cleveland, and that money that they gave us, first of all, it's in a check, so we can't really get that money and access it immediately. We also have to pay for our hotels, and we have to pay for any food that we eat, anything we do within those next 2 days in Las Vegas. So we are tired and we're unhappy, and even though they gave us all this money, we know we are going to have to spend at least some piece of it, and by the time they do all of this, it's like 1:30, almost 2 in the morning before it all gets straightened out. But then I get a little lucky and find out that Southwest has a flight that leaves at 12:30 p.m. It would go through Chicago, we'd have a little layover, and then we would get home around 11:30 p.m. at that night. Again, it's 1:30 in the morning or 2 at this point. I jump on the tickets. They cost almost $800. So at this point, it's only about 11 or 12 hours until that next flight takes off. And so we're thinking to ourselves, again, it's 1:30 or 2 in the morning, should we even bother going and getting a hotel that I'm gonna have to pay for to only be there for, 5 or 6 hours before we then have to get back in a car, come back to the airport, go through security, and then of course it would take time to get to the hotel to begin with, and we decide it's not worth it. We decide that we are just going to stay at the airport and we are just gonna snooze wherever we can at the airport. Now remember, my son is college age, he's bigger than me. It's not like I was forcing a 7-year-old to sleep in the airport. So this is the decision we make. So we get very little sleep, maybe 2 hours in the airport for my son, maybe 15 minutes for me. I really could not get myself unagitated at that point. And so we have to wait for the flight, and we're just dying by the time it finally gets there. But Southwest actually lets us on the plane. I sleep a little bit between Las Vegas and Chicago. We finally get home at 11:30 p.m. that night, actually closer to midnight. Now I will say there was someone at the Frontier baggage office when we got there, and our bags that had gone on the flight were there waiting for us. So that was one thing that Frontier did right. Now one final note, and this is not about Frontier, it's actually about American Express. And it's not a criticism exactly, but it is something where I thought they maybe could have gone a little above and beyond for us. There is an American Express Centurion Lounge in the Las Vegas airport. I am an American Express Platinum card holder. That lounge opens at 5 a.m. and I thought to myself, well, maybe they'll let us in a little early because the rule is you can only get in within 3 hours of your flight time. Our flight time was 12:45. They weren't going to let us in till 9:45. I knew this going in, but I went in there anyway to see if maybe they could help us out. Now, I probably looked a little disheveled at this time. I might not have smelled as good as I would like to after a very long day and trying to sleep in the airport. But anyway, I went up there and I tried to see if we could get in, and the answer was no, you gotta wait till 9:45. And I just thought to myself, there's hardly anybody in here. It's super early in the morning. You could let us in and let us, sit with a little more comfort here. I understand there's the rules, but these aren't like, the laws exactly. You would think there would be a little bit of leeway in terms of what the person at the desk could do. But again, I didn't look like a high-powered executive at that point. So that is the story, and maybe it makes me sound like not the savviest traveler, but I've never been kicked off a flight before. When I was in Las Vegas, that supervisor to the gate agent, she came up and said, not to be condescending, but in the future you really should check in, and then this probably wouldn't have happened to you. And I'm like, I understand about checking in for a flight. It just didn't work out with everything else we had going on. Don't put this back on me as if it's my fault that I got kicked off the flight. So I wasn't really happy with that, but maybe I should blame myself a little bit. Maybe I should know better and know Frontier is the low-cost airline, and you have to pay extra if you even want a seat assignment with Frontier. So if you show up last, you check in last, well then you are first on the chopping block. Maybe I should have known that, but it didn't occur to me that we weren't going to get on the flight at all. So I would be interested to hear your take on the situation. Was I right to be angry? Do I bear some of the blame here? Is the fact that all of the airlines, do some sort of overselling okay? Or is this something that should be illegal? Should I be happy that I got compensated even though I just turned around and used pretty much all of that money to pay for new tickets, and it meant that I got home 18 hours later than I should have and slept in the airport? All of that stuff. How should I feel about it? I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about Frontier Airlines Airlines right now, but maybe I should shoulder some of the blame. I am not sure. I would love to hear your comments in that comment section below. Otherwise, I thank you for watching, and as always, please go to proudmoney.com where we do credit card reviews, talk personal finance, we talk deals, and all sorts of other fun stuff too. If you are so sick of this video that you are not going to leave a comment or go to my website, maybe you want to watch this video.